Welcome to 5 Questions With, and today we are with Oliver Caviglioli. I hope I said that correct. And we're going to start with the first question, Oliver, and that's, what's your current job role?
Oh, I've been thinking about, I don't really have a title. I'm a fellow director of Train Visual, and we create how-tos. So what I actually do is I write teaching techniques.
Okay, brilliant. And what led you to that? What's your teaching background?
Well, this September, it had been 40 years since I started teaching. Wow, that's a long time ago. I worked in, I was a PE teacher and then moved into remedial, as it was, into special school. And eventually I had a decade as a head teacher of an SLD school, severe learning difficulty. And then the last 12 years I started off doing training, teaching visual teaching techniques to teachers. And then around about 5 years ago, it really hit home that when I left the training room, everything in my head went with me. So we decided to find a solution so that everything we knew could be captured and could be accessible to teachers at all time. And what we did was we visualized teaching in step-by-step precision, and they're called the how-tos. Yeah,
great stuff. And I love the work, by the way. I love the work. So who was the biggest influence on your teaching practice then? And perhaps you could talk about it in your current role.
Oh, my current role, in my teaching role, after 2 years of being a PE teacher, I went into special school, and every night, my wife's an infant teacher, and every night I pleaded with her to help me plan my lessons the next day, because I just wasn't used to having 12 children all day, every week, every month. It was just so, because I was trained as a secondary PE teacher and French, neither of which were that useful really. So I did all the resources for her, because in those days teachers made all the resources, and in exchange she helped me out with my teaching.
Okay.
More recently, I've been really influenced by people in business. Let me tell you one episode. In 2008, I went to Berlin to an international conference on visual thinking, and I was the only educator there. And I discovered that businesses were using visual techniques all the time. Not because they couldn't read and write. In fact, Silicon Valley, with all these PhDs, were using visual techniques all the time, because they realized that human beings think they understand what someone else is saying, but actually they're off into their own interpretation. And in terms of business, that costs them millions of pounds of mistakes. So I thought, I was frustrated as a head teacher. I had the best staff library, and the books weren't read because teachers are busy, aren't they? And I can see now that I came away from that conference and I said, we just got to visualize the teaching techniques so teacher can just dip in, dip out, just in time, just what you need, without kind of having to wait for your mentor, the training session, sit through 4.5 hours. Did I answer your question?
Well, it was about who influenced you most. So you touched upon your wife, and it
was people who aren't technically teachers who were in the visual communication fields. Right. And I could list the name, but you wouldn't kind of know who they were.
Okay. So if you could then recommend a piece of reading or research that every teacher must read, what would it be?
Is that the same as the book question?
That is the reading or research.
Okay, right. Well, actually, I've cheated like people do on Desert Island Discs. I've got 2. Okay. This one, can you see that?
Okay, yeah.
Let's make it quick. Yeah. This is cognitive science, really well summarized and made practical for teachers. And yet, there's nothing like it being applied by real current British teachers. And this book here, I think, is brilliant. And it may fool you because it's simple, but it's really all those principles applied in real classrooms in 2 different subjects in secondary schools. So making every lesson count. Fabulously elegant and productive book.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for that. And one teaching strategy now, and I've been looking forward to this, is sharing this with us. So you've got to recommend one teaching strategy to teachers. What's it going to be and why?
I'll give you the why first. My background was in PE, and then I went into severe learning difficulty schools gradually, from moderate learning difficulty. And what I realized was that as a PE trained, everything was organized. And then when I went into special schools, I saw the difficulties students had with organizing themselves. And I personally have a framework where, whilst organization isn't everything in learning, it's the major part. Organization is how we make sure we don't get cognitive overload. It's how we make sure we can identify things, so we can put it away neatly, so we have an understanding, so we can get it out again. You know, it accounts for an enormous amount. And this technique here is the technique that links in teacher modeling, teacher explanation, peer explanation, and a really neat way to ensure, in my experience, 100% success rate in retrieval. Okay, so here goes.
Okay, let's go.
So I have to ask you, first of all, can you see that? Is that too big, too small? Is that just right?
That's perfect.
Okay, so here we have, interesting, John Thompson I did a drawing of his teaching technique, doing something quite similar sometime this summer. Here, there's the teacher sitting down, and he's using, can you see the visualizer somewhere there?
Yep.
And he's actually drawing a map, but it can be any visual organizational structure. And as he's drawing it, it comes up on the screen, so all the students can see it. And as he's drawing it, he's explaining what he knows, what he needs to know, how it connects, why he's using those words, how it's best summarized. And the students are writing it down, and obviously it's being processed as they do it as well, because they know what's coming next. What's coming next is he doesn't complete the full map, otherwise it'll be overloaded. After one, so he chunks it up. He then asks and nominates a student to explain the bit of knowledge that's been modeled up on the board. And then he does that several times, so you know that everyone's quite secure in their understanding. So then he gets the students in pairs to look at their map, their branches, and explain the whole thing, just as the teacher had done earlier on. So they're assimilating and transforming it into their own words. They're not allowed to simply read the keywords on there. He might give a rule, something for every keyword, I want at least 3 sentences. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then we chunk it up, we go to the next one. So then we move on, he does exactly the same thing. He writes down, organizes, summarizes the knowledge, explains why he's choosing those keywords, explains the connections and how it relates to the whole, and the students do their part in trying to figure out what it means as they write it down. And guess what he does then? He asks questions, nominating different students to summarize, trying to probe to try and find if there's any misconceptions that he needs to clarify still further. And there they go again. He then directs them to summarize using their own words, remembering to repeat whatever rule he decides. It may be 3 sentences for every key word. So that goes on until the whole thing's completed. And then I need to have a look at this one. Yeah, now here's a really important part. Now they take it in turns. So if you and I were doing it, Dan, and it was my turn, your role would be to listen and to ask questions if there's anything you didn't understand, and ask me to clarify, expand further. Now what I'll be doing is, so the red part shows the part that I'm talking about. You're going to have to trust me on this, but anyone watching, really try it out. Use the index finger of the hand that you write with and make direct physical contact and trace the line underneath the word that you're expounding about. Trace it. Okay, so your hand will eventually, your finger, index finger, will be tracing the whole map. And then you switch turns, and then you would have your turn and I'd be listening to you and asking for some clarifying questions. Then what happens then is you take the map away from the board, from your desk, you're left with a blank piece of paper, and you can leave it after a minute, and you ask all the students to redraw the map. When you think what's happened, they've had each part of the chunk of knowledge explained, clarified, questioned, and then they've also had it explained summarily in the exercise we've just done, and there is some kind of, here's a bit of jargon for you, I'm not sure it makes sense, embodied cognition. The hand seems to just know exactly where everything goes, and all the explanation that you were giving to your partner comes out, and you redraw the map. And my experience working with both students and teachers, the maps come out very often like photocopies. It's just remarkable retrieval practice. And then you do it again a day later, a week later, and a month later. And if you're building up towards an exam, you have them up against the wall, or you bring them out now and again and you question them on it. That's it.
Fantastic.